Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I welcome you all in the session under ICON Series 2023-24, co-organized by European Business Technology Center with Chamber of Marathwada Industries, Agriculture, CMIA, and Marathwada Accelerator for a Growth and Incubation Council, MAGIC. And of course, our outreach partner, SBES College of Science, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, Aurangabad. So always question is for startups and for small industries roams around in everything, whether you will talk about technology, whether you want to do outreach for investors and others, everything comes to a point. How to manage our funds, right? A very crucial aspect. How to manage, do the bookkeeping about the profit or the losses, because it's an integral aspect of your business, right? Especially known as the financial management. So this section is going to revolve around asking questions from our expert, especially for the startups, understanding the different aspects of finance management, and of course, managing your resources effectively. My name is Ankita Tyagi. I'm head of IP and projects at European Business Technology Center, and I'll be your moderator throughout the session. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ashish ji from Magic to share his opening remarks. Ashish ji, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon and welcome to this session of Tata Magic Innovation Hub, wherein we have partnered with European Business Technology Center as well as CII for the ICON platform. And for this session, we have SB Science College as our institutional partner. So I welcome all the representatives of various organizations as well as today's speaker. So quickly, I will share about Magic. It's a business incubator and SME accelerator which is promoted by the Regional Industry Association, that is Chamber of Marathwada Industries and Agriculture, CMIA. It's a sector agnostic business incubation center, and we support startups and MSMEs for accelerating their growth. We are recognized by Maharashtra State Innovation Society as well as Ministry of Commerce and Industries for Startup India Seed Fund. We are a partner incubator for IDEX, and we work with Ministry of MSME also. This particular initiative is part of our CSR partnership with Tata Technologies Limited, wherein we are supporting ready engineers to shape up as future entrepreneurs. And we have invited eminent speakers on very relevant topics which are important to startups as well as MSMEs. And today's session is also one such very important session because it deals with finance. And finance is the heart of any business. So I'm sure today's session would be really interesting. As usual, Ankita has set of questions for the speaker. And through these answers, I'm sure all the audience who are present over here will be benefited immensely. So I won't take much of time and hand over to Ankita to continue the session further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish ji, for setting up the context setting up the context in a manner that everyone is going to be eager. Yes, what's next for us? Thank you very much. So now I would like to invite Dr. Didi from SBS College of Science for his welcome remarks, please.
Good afternoon, all of you. I welcome Mr. Shamik Ukil sir, who is the very eminent and proper person to guide this managing funds, good guidebook for experts for the startups. Actually, this is a great platform to the students because now these students are trying to trap the new opportunities. Actually, SBS College of Science is working in placement cell from last 20 years, and thousands of students are being appointed in a number of multinational companies. But now this is a need to start with their startups and to think about the entrepreneurship and develop them themselves. So now the students of MSc and BSc, computer science and electronics, they will get a good opportunity to listen regarding this, startups. And even it is very important, rather than the startup, how you manage the funds. Because without managing fund, it is not at all possible to start the business, growth of the business, and success in the business. So without wasting time, I congratulate the Magic, then the Tata Technology, European Business and Technology Center, and all the connected organizations regarding this seminar. And without wasting time, I will request to Ankita Madam to start the proceeding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. JD. And while highlighting the importance of having an academic institution in the session, because of course they are our future and our future companies, small businesses, and you have already mentioned that thousands of students have already been placed in various organizations and industry. So definitely this session is going to be very useful for them. Thank you very much. So now I welcome our expert speaker over here, Shamik Okhil, who is by profession is a CA, Indian CA, and is well versed with the different aspects such as the legal compliance as well as regulatory aspects of which needs to be worked in business, right? And he already had, I think, more than 200 startups he already advised regarding the various aspects of fund management. So welcome, Shamik, in our session.
Thank you so much, Ankita. This is a very pertinent point. In my experience of dealing with many startups, we have seen that most people are not, while they want to raise funds, they don't really know the nitty-gritties of a fundraise, what are the different terms, what they mean, and what is the different stages of funding. And so I think it is a very pertinent session, and that is what we are going to cover today. Should I start?
Yeah, definitely. So my first question is, of course, as Ashish already highlighted, that we always have set of questions by picking up the various aspects in your business. So first aspect we have picked around the funding aspect. So Shamik, tell me one thing. We always talk about the equity financing and then debt financing for the companies, right? So in your view, how do you think, what are the advantages and disadvantages of these two financing aspects for the companies, especially startups and small businesses?
See, equity in the initial stages of any business is very cheap. For an investor to come in. So what we have seen is many early businesses end up giving a significant portion of their shareholding to an investor. And I recall that we had a client in Bhubaneswar. They are into medical technologies devices. They said they ended up giving about 25 lakhs in exchange of 25%. This values the company at 1 crore. And just last week, they have raised $500,000 from a group of investors. So the challenge which comes in these kind of situations is that the future investor who is going to come in maybe 2 years down the line, he will question that why did you give up 10% or maybe 25%, whatever it is, just a significant amount for just a very nominal funding. And this is what I also asked the founder, and he said that if I did not take this funding, 25 lakhs for 25%, I would not have come so far. So this is actually a reality of just a startup funding scenario, that it is a there are two sides of every coin. So if you don't take funding, and if you take funding for a very cheap cheap price, then somebody in the future will definitely question that why did you give up so much funds in exchange of such a high equity. And this particular startup that I'm talking about, these were the questions also raised by the investor, and we were able to explain the nitty-gritties of why we did what we did. But this becomes a bit difficult sometimes to answer.
Right. So in your view, how, whatever choice they are picking up, so how they're going to impact the decision-making power for the company? Because in hierarchy, of course, you have some other stakeholders in equity, right? So of course, they will have more say. some say in the company, right? So how do you think that generally it impacts, if you have some case studies, something in mind, some few pointers for the startups or the businesses?
See, generally, when people give up equity, what they are essentially doing is they are bringing an investor onto their cap table, which also sometimes mean that these investors will have a say in your decision making. And that is a difficult situation for a founder. When an investor is also taking part in the day-to-day decision making, it becomes difficult for a founder to kind of cope up with that situation, because he has been always, you know he always had a free hand of operating the business. But it is not always the case. So when in an equity situation, some portion of the decision making is diluted, of course. And secondly, in case of an equity financing, almost 90% of the cases, unless it is an early investment, the investor will nominate somebody to sit on the board of the company. So each time you have to take a decision, you have to ask, or maybe kind of invite that person onto a board meeting. He will also say he can vote for or against, depending on his thing. So equity, if you give up very early, then these are the things that we need to be concerned about, that there will be a dilution in uh, decision making. But in case of a like a compulsory convertible debenture or a preference share, the dilution of investment, this dilution of decision making doesn't happen on day one. And partly because the compulsory convertible preference share or a debenture is a convertible instrument on day one. It will get converted on, let's say, after 3 years, on satisfaction of certain events. So till that time, the founder has the authority, or to take actions according to the best of the interest of the company. Sorry, my voice is a bit because the
Yeah,
weather in
I
Delhi is.
mean, lower side, yeah. But I have a question around this. So, I mean, I'm sure documentation plays a very crucial role in the entire scenario, right? So, do you have specific questions? I mean, a set of documents which you say suggest advice to your clients that, okay, so these documents should be in your book while signing or while talking to other investors or whatsoever you should be looking at.
um, when somebody is raising funds in the initial 2 years of starting a business, let me share my experience. We have seen that sometimes founders do not take the compliances very seriously, as much as it should be, because for a founder mindset, he is working to build the business. He thinks that maybe we can do it later. But and in Lucknow there is a client who said that I will take care of it later. Let me first build the business. They are into Aadhaar authentication. They are working with UEIDAI. So what happened was, they were building the business, but the compliances were getting lacked. At the 1.5 or 2 years, at the end of that period, when an investor came into the company, the investor expressed interest to invest. They were very happy. But when the due diligence started, the many non-compliances came to the front, and that delayed the process a lot. And all the penalties, etc. Because investor is not going to say that I will give you the funds and you use my funds to pay the penalties. He will say that you complete all the penalties, you make your company 100% compliant, then I will make the investment. So this is a very tricky situation. So my recommendation is always is, it doesn't cost too much to be compliant. Non-compliance is significantly costly.
Okay, okay. So that's a very crucial aspect, I should say, because if we are literally moving it, I mean, first step should be first major, and the key steps should be comply with all of the whatever compliance are there, or whatever pointers should be there, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So if we have a small company, right, at the start, we generally go for the potential investors while pitching to them, while talking to them, or presenting their products to them. What elements or the pointers they should include in their finance aspects, basically?
From an investor perspective, the only thing he's interested in is to see the future of the company. What you have done so far is good. You must have as a startup must have reached the MVP stage. You must have kind of taken certain grants and reached the MVP stage. But to be able to scale, he needs growth capital, for which he goes to the investor. Now the investor will firstly see that whether the compliances are in order or not. Let us say um, let us say see, there is a concept of commencement of business of a company. If a company is registered today, within 180 days from today, we have to do a couple of things. Firstly, there should be a board hanging outside the business premises, declaring that premise as the as the registered office of the company. This is the most common non-compliance. Uh, and if the government doesn't really, I mean, because there are tens of lakhs of companies, but if the government were to point this out, there are significant non-compliances. So the investor will definitely see all of this. And in our experience, whenever we are representing our clients to in front of lawyers or the due diligence party conducted the due diligence law firm which is representing the investor, these issues come up. So I remember one time in Mumbai, one of my the investors came to the registered office of the company for a meeting. It was a WeWork, some co-working space, but there was no this board declaring this premise as the uh, kind of this office of the company. So that is a very outright non-compliance. So the people who had come with him for due diligence, they had pointed this out, and this was the first starting point of the discussion. These are things that an investor may be very excited about the business model, but nobody wants to put in money into the company which is risky. There could be
Right.
certain. So my very strong recommendation to all startups is that uh, take compliance very seriously.
Hmm. Okay. Tell me one thing that right now these are the players who are outright in the industry, right? But for the spin-offs who are coming in academic setting, right? And they are sitting in incubators or the space provided by their academic institutions. So for them also, is it the same compliance apply, or do we have some different set of compliance for them?
See, as long as you register a company, the compliance will be the same. For a let's say a 10 crore company, the compliance will be the same. There are very few things which are different, but generally the compliances are the same for everybody. Let's say 1 crore company or a 2 crore company, the compliance will be same, but barring a few small compliances here and there. So this is, and also whenever somebody, even a college student who registers his startup, I mean he wants to get incubated, as a matter of condition, before the incubation agreement is signed, he has to register a company, because that is how the Startup India regulations recognize a startup. It has to be a private limited company or an LLP, or there are some other formats. In some cases, it also accepts a contractual partnership also. But whenever we are looking at the long term of doing business, the company or an LLP is the most suitable format.
Okay, okay. And what's the role of bookkeeping basically for the startups? Because generally, as you say, sometimes it's like, okay, we'll do later on. There are some tabs in there, but we'll do later on. That thing is also there. So, what's your suggestion around it? How it should be there?
Legally speaking, the government has come out with an amendment mandating all companies, regardless of whether they are startup, to maintain accounts on a day-to-day basis. So let us say I have incurred 3 expenses today. By the close of day, it should have been entered into my books of accounts. Somebody can say that, who's
Okay.
going to come and check? But then, I mean, what if somebody checks? So what I'm saying is, as far as the law is very clear, that the accounting has to be done on a daily basis.
Okay. And are there any penalties for not doing it? I mean, just asking because sometimes it's
Yes.
there, but sometimes not.
Yes, there was a notification. I had to see what penalties are prescribed, but because this is the law, non-compliance will definitely have some penalties. I don't remember the exact penal provisions, but there are.
Okay, okay, okay. So now comes after I'm in bookkeeping, definitely. So valuation is a very significant aspect in the entire processes. So when the valuation goes on in the negotiation process, when if there are some investors showing up the interest, so how a startup can ensure what pointers they should keep in mind while going for the fair valuation?
Um, Firstly, valuation will only be a starting point of discussion, because if I say 10 crores valuation, There was an angel investment platform for one of our crypto edtech companies. They demanded 10 crores, and straight away the partner of that angel investing platform said, "No, I will give you only 3 crores valuation." So there is a very big difference sometimes in our expectations and what the market may view us. Secondly, uh, from a pointer perspective, the investor, I will tell you how the investor thinks. The investor thinks if you bring to him an Excel spreadsheet, and you derive a value of per share valuation, most of the time when they don't have to agree, they don't want to agree with that valuation, they will say that, these are just kind of numbers. So very important point, all of your numbers in the valuation process should be backed by either sales orders, either actual sales invoices, or if you are projecting your revenue for future, it should be backed by some contracts to say that the reason I'm saying that next year I will have 10 crores of revenue is because I already have 7 crores contract signed with one of my customers. So there has to be a basis of that valuation also. I mean, I've seen people just draw up a valuation, but it is uh, ultimately investors will feel that it is just an Excel spreadsheet. So it is best to have concrete supporting documents to substantiate. If I'm saying 10 crores next year, that means I have at least 7 crores committed by a customer, and the rest of the 3 crores will come through my business development activities.
Okay. 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 So you have to be transparent and you should be having, I mean, you can leverage the limit, but you should have at least in your bucket, right? I mean, that's
Yes.
the message. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as we know that there are different funding stages for the startups or the small businesses. And of course, with the funding, growth starts, right? So what are these different stages of the funding and how they align with the growth phases of the startups?
So these are on your screen, you can see the different funding stages. Seed funding is when you take money from an incubator or kind of a government scheme to establish the whether the idea is correct or not, whether people are going to buy the product or not. And sometimes it is also used to conduct these detailed surveys, Google forms, to many investors, that whether there is an actual market or not. There has to be an addressable market for a product to be able to secure a fund after the seed funding. Because if somebody is putting in money, then they will need to be they will be very sure. Series A, uh, Series A is a growth stage. As I said that one of my clients has recently raised some money, about 7.5 crores. So what they are doing is, with Series A, it is growth capital. Initially they were functioning in Bhubaneswar. Now they are coming to the north, entire north, from Jammu Kashmir hospitals to AIIMS Delhi, to AIIMS, other AIIMS in the northern region. They are pitching it, and they are using that money that they have raised recently for these, just to ensure that there is significant growth. That is also what the investor is looking for. Immediate, maybe like a 10x or a 20x growth. Series B is when you want to enter foreign markets. Let's say you've covered all of India in Series A, and UAE is a emerging market. I mean, it's not an emerging; it's a very interesting, exciting market. The UAE government has been making many amendments, especially in the blockchain and crypto space. So a Series B is for expansion. It is an expansion stage funding for entering new markets. Sometimes also strategic acquisitions, like there is a crypto platform. They had given an offer to our crypto edtech company that I want to buy you completely for 7 crores or something. So that they had gotten a Series B funding from their investors. So they thought that I will buy this crypto edtech company, and this crypto edtech company will educate its own customers, and those customers will now come to my platform to trade in crypto. It is kind of like that, strategic acquisitions. Now Series E is later stage funding. This is just to consolidate market position, to establish ourselves as a leader, and it ultimately prepares for an IPO. The other two are very general seed, kind of a seeds and funding only. Uh, it is kind of a startup India seed fund. There are many non-dilutive funding schemes provided by the government, and these are all government supported and administered through startup. Accelerators are just people who graduate from an incubator and they want to scale, but it is before seed fund.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking at all these funding rounds and descriptions, one interesting question around it is that whenever some transitions happen, so I'm sure there are challenges posed, right? So, what kind of challenges company face generally whenever in each session? Because A is small, B is much bigger, C is much bigger, so the compliance as well, right? By looking at the different aspect. So, how these challenges impact the business? And what kind of challenges they pose?
The intangible challenge is to kind of have your feet on the ground. The intangible, this thing is because once you are getting 30 crores of series A, there are many things we want to do. In fact, there are I have seen some cases like this. But apart from the compliance perspective, uh, it is not so, I would say, difficult, because by the time we are raising Series A, our consultants have also been with us through seed funding, through government grants, accelerators. They have been with us for a significant amount of time, and the compliances are not very difficult. You just have to get a couple of valuations done. If it is a foreign funding, there is a chartered accountant valuation required, and these kind of things. Nothing very um, nothing very detailed in either of the Series A, B, C, or compliances are the same. You have to just inform the government that you have raised this money and you are giving, let's say, CCPS in exchange of that money. That's all.
Okay. And how all these things impact business if there are, I mean, challenges for the company. So how their further business will be impacted?
Legally, I don't see a much of a challenge, but
Yeah.
when we are expanding, say in Series A, go to my previous example. If I was functioning in Bhubaneswar earlier and now I'm covering the entire north, that means I need to have offices in Delhi, Gurgaon, Jammu Kashmir, which is an emerging has an emerging ecosystem now. To manage all these offices, to have somebody who is responsible and is able to manage those offices, because one founder cannot manage multiple things. He has to let go that control that he's accustomed to since seed funding, government grant, etc. So from an intangible, what do you say, intangible reason, I feel that the founder will sometimes feel that not that grip which I earlier used to have in the business, because you will have more people taking decisions, and due to limitation of time, everything cannot be discussed with the founder. So other than that,
Right.
legally, I don't see much of a challenge, because
Okay.
we
Okay.
already by that time the startup already has very mature consultants who have been doing this, and sometimes also the venture capitalist, they recommend that you take this person, or like this.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me one thing. I mean, now as you mentioned that yes, there are no challenges. Tell me one thing. Because recently Baiju's, I mean, everyone knows this thing has happened. So in your view as an expert, I mean, how these things can be prevented from just a startup point of view? I mean, as a pros and cons, we say do's or don'ts. So, what are the pointers one should keep in mind?
I think decision making, while it has to be decentralized after a stage, but the more important decisions, like one point that comes to my mind is hiring the C-suite level people. It has to be a very carefully taken decision, because those people will ultimately decide the course of the business. The example that you were saying, the example that you just gave, the founder has so many things in his plate. He has taken loans from funding from abroad. He has found investors in India. The business is not growing as it should, because people in my opinion, are going back to that offline education system. So to for that, I think corporate governance is also one important factor, because if I'm taking a decision, we cannot say that we cannot take isolated independent decisions after a point in the company. Investors, when you sign share purchase agreements with any investor, there is a annexure to that agreement which says that you cannot take decisions for these 10 points without consulting me. So these are corporate governance areas which are generally already covered. But I think the company that you mentioned, the reason that they are facing this issue is they have become too big, too quick. So that transition time did not happen, and probably that is the reason people are leaving on the top level also. Last week, I think somebody left at the C-suite level. So I think that there should
Yeah.
be a gradual growth.
Okay. So looking at the gradual growth parameter, tell me one thing. If there is a company, let's talk about the deep technology company, right? Or the company who actually lives on not on SaaS base, but on the products, right? Technical products, as in healthcare, the domain. So if there's a startup who wants to work with another startup, right? Or maybe with a big company, there are two examples, one for two cases, one for the small startups like them, one for the big companies, right? And they want to take their technologies, license that. So are there any pointers they should keep in mind while working with other counterparts, or the document they should be keeping in mind? Because of course, whatever they'll be doing the licensing or whatsoever, it will reflect in their books, right? In their funds. So how they should keep it?
The most important point is to have control over your IP. You would also know this uh, because when you are entering into a contract with a very big player in the market. So just to take an example, we have a client who is into the CBDC space. They are now entering into pilot projects with different banks to test whether the CBDC project is working in a kind of a controlled environment within the bank. So when uh, so let's say on a typical day, the founder will be sitting in the bank's office. He will be integrating those systems with their systems, and in conversations, sometimes the IP, how they did what they did, gets out. So very importantly, first and foremost, I think the IP should be protected, and secondly, the agreements, especially the let's say technology transfer agreements or agreements related to sharing of like when you are licensing some software to a bigger player, the contract should be very solid in terms of telling in terms of envisaging all those situations which could go wrong, and those agreements should cover all of these things. So I believe IP and the contract should be very strong, preferably drawn up by law firms who have experience in the startup space. But if the startup is very early, they will find difficult to gather so much money to kind of hire a very big law firm to. So I mean, but law firms are also now becoming startup centric, so they have hourly based models, sometimes fixed based models also.
Okay. Having the right person for the job, that's very important, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what about the regulatory aspects? Because regulatory compliance is also one of the very crucial aspects in here. So according to you, as an expert perspective, what are the straight away regulatory compliance they should be doing it?
First and foremost, I think this is applicable for an initial stage startup. When they are raising funds, they should integrate the government very timely. And there is it is called a CP, conditions precedent, and conditions subsequent clause in the agreements. Once you complete those, let's say 3 or 4 compliances after the funding is received, but you have to also inform the government that you have received this funding, and you have made those allotment of shares or debentures. You have to give that CP certificate to the investors, telling him that all of those compliances are completed. From a regulatory perspective, if we are raising funds from any foreign investor, it qualifies into if we are raising funds against equity or even preference shares, this qualifies as a foreign direct investment, and there are many compliances that need to be done. Not just not just there are just not one time compliances. These are compliances which need to be done on an annual basis also. So the investor, the founders, of course, I mean, they are busy with their own, maybe they're looking to raise the next round also sometimes. But these are things that
Okay.
need to be very much aware about. Foreign funding, the consequences are severe.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, there's a question attached to foreign funding only. If one company already have an office in India, now they want to open their office in the outside, right, in the market. So, are there some pointers for them they should be keeping in mind?
Yes, there are two ways to set up an office abroad. So, let's take France for an example. We are working on a France project, so it is very fresh for me. There are two ways to open an office abroad. First is the founder himself creates a company in his individual capacity abroad. Second is the Indian company creates an office abroad. These are two different things. But to my memory, if you invest as as an individual, then you have a 2 crore, up to 2 crores under the liberalized remittance scheme. You can remit the money as contributions from the individual to abroad. But in the if the Indian company is setting up an office abroad, then there is no limit. So in both these cases, the overseas direct investment rules also come into the picture.
Okay. Okay. Is it applicable for, because what I heard in Europe, we generally, startups are not the startups, right? I mean, they are known as the scale-ups in there. And here it's different. So whatever compliance, they have to follow, if they have to follow according to other jurisdictions, so they have to follow according to their definition, or what's the thing in here?
See, the compliances are dependent on which entity is located at which place. For example, an Indian entity will be required to follow all Indian laws, and similarly, the
Hmm.
uh, the let's say the US entity will have to follow US laws. But from a transfer pricing perspective, there is a I believe it is called master file. Then in the master file there are certain transfer pricing regulations also. So let's say if an Indian company has three offices in France, US, and some other Singapore, so they have to maintain some master files also. And I'm not a transfer pricing expert, but this is my limited knowledge that there are additional requirements when you have multiple jurisdiction offices as an offshoot of the Indian company.
Okay, okay, that's really nice. And tell me one thing, and of course, the last thing I think generally people think, or sometimes is the benefit for the or the advantage of creating a startup for the person or the founders, if they want to wrap up their business and go for the M&A, right? As an exit opportunity, right? So if we'll talk about that, because it's a small segment, but it's very important, right? If that happens, so what are the do's and don'ts for them, or the pointers hitting to the target?
If every startup is very close to the founder. In case of a M&A deal, um, the recent trend is that the founder is hired by the acquirer as a CEO to run the business for, let's say, 2 years, because um, because to to be able for the purchaser, if he buys the business and gives the founder an exit, then he may find it difficult to run the business because he doesn't know the business as well as uh, the, the the existing founder. So there is a continuity of for the sake of continuity of business, the incoming investor who purchases the entire 100% share capital of the company sometimes asks the founder to continue in his role for 2 years, and for a a good salary. But the founder will not hold any shares. He will be given an exit, but then again in some cases he is given an option to participate in the ESOP pool to continue to hold, let's say, 2-3%, some minor stake, so that he has skin in the game.
Okay, okay. As there were some examples in there from process and others. Okay, okay. So very interesting question in here we have received from our audience. So why only few startups has succeed or survive, and number of get failed? Is there any concern of funds in your opinion? Yes, I mean 2 cents. So what I can give in here, Yes, as the outright, I mean, the Shamik, you mentioned that they have to, I mean, go for the compliance as well, because if you're going in penalties, then of course you're wasting your funds as well, right? And another thing, what I saw in my experience is that after interacting with the small, big, and medium enterprises, a very interesting fact is that when they have to go for the scaling up of their product, right? First point is that they're at initial stage, they have created something in the lab, right? Then going for, okay, at the factory level, a small factory setup. But when you're going for actual POC, adapting in the conditions for a city or something at a big level, at that level, yes, if it is going to succeed, well and good, but you have to have the good funds in there, good infrastructure, good partners to manufacture at next level, right? Otherwise, you're going to be doomed. There are some, I mean, so at some level, this is a very, very crucial point. Another point, what I see, failing to keeping your copies or the documents properly, right? If
Mm.
you, I mean, if you are going if you are going as in partnership or whatever, I mean, maybe with the even the local partners in here, the companies, right? And you're not able to sign the proper agreements with them. If you're losing the clauses in there, very, I mean, the loose clauses that, yes, this might be the reason for the failing in. And even the big startups sometimes, as we just mentioned, a very good example in front of us, that how it happened. One of the very significant company in Unicorn, now it's going back. So what may be the reason? The decision makers. How is it? It's because growth is a gradual process. It's not something overnight you can achieve. So after getting the funds, also you have to be very, very strategic. You need to include all of the stakeholders. You need to interact with them. You need to discuss with them how we are going to proceed ahead. It should not be the 1%, 2% decision how we're going to spend money on our whims, right? So, I mean, these are my 2 cents. So,
Yes,
Shamik, your opinion in there?
I agree. Teams break if one person is taking all the decisions. Ultimately, as as humans, everybody wants limelight. If one person is taking all the decisions, so the team is not bound to go on for a long time. And to answer this, from my perspective, this question, firstly, investment should not be a goal. Investment just happens when you need funds. And if I as a startup is looking to raise funds, I really want funds. My recommendation is start when you don't need funds, because the investor can sense uh, in your voice that the desperation of getting funds. We should start sorry, we should start when we don't need funds. uh, and when from an investor perspective, again, is they look at couple of factors. Firstly, how good is the team? Secondly, how big is the market? And thirdly, how well the company has executed what it already has. Say you have couple of projects in hand, the investor will ask you, what have you done with what you have? So if this is we have a good track record, then the chances of getting funding is definitely higher. And this question is, why only few startups succeed or survive? I mean, I think that's really the law of nature, because if everybody succeeds, then success will become very very general. So, but yes, as you rightly said, compliance is a very very big reason. Uh, it just reminds me of another startup. It is incubated by the Ministry of Electronics, one of their centers. Uh, they have they give up, I think, 3% equity in exchange of some funds, but they have received that 310 rupees or something they give in exchange of 3%. They have received the funds, but they cannot make that compliance to give them the share certificate, etc., because their earlier compliances are pending. So just imagine the the situation that the startup is in. I mean, he cannot raise because he has a lot of backlog of compliances, and to complete that compliances, he will have to spend 3 lakh rupees. So he can neither spend 3 lakh nor take future funds. So I think, and also just one more point, there is no dearth of funds for the right startup, having the right product, right market, and right team. Uh, if you compare December 22 and December 23, um, that somebody was say I remember watching one I think one channel. They were saying that there has been a decline in funding and whatever. but still funding did happen. Some people did get funds. So why can we not be that amongst that group? So I don't find it very good to say that there is a funding winter. It may be difficult, but there are people who are getting funds. Maybe the investor wants us to do something differently. And also investors don't understand every business. Like maybe in somebody I was talking to in the IDEX defense scheme. He's developing drones for military applications. He went to a founder who has agri knowledge, and of course he will not understand. He will not understand what we are, what the product that we have built for military application. He will not understand, and there is no reason to feel that this this investor did not give me enough attention, etc. Because he cannot, and he also can't say that. He can't say that I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And I think, I mean, you rightly highlighted this point that you need to know your demand. Where is the demand? Where is the market? And go for it.
Yes.
Right? Then only will you be able to get the relevant stakeholders with you. Otherwise, again, situation will arise that you are a SaaS-based company focused literally on a very specific domain, and you're looking for some other founder who have just come from real estate, and they're like, okay, what to do? They will not be able to see your importance, right? Your product importance and how to go ahead, because it's really a lock and key combination. It should be right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this session was really, really very interesting session. I've learned lot many things around the funds aspect, because we say that we are an IP expert, but yes, funds is something we always say, yes, there's a top priority in there. So thank you very much, Shamik, to be here with us and shared a lot of, I mean, very significant information around the fund management aspects. So please, guys, stay in tune with us for our next session, and please give us the feedback as well. Shamik, you may drop your email ID in the chat box for the convenience for our audience. And audience, if you have any other questions, so please share with us, or maybe to Shamik directly. You can email to him, contact him. He'll be responding back to you. And please give us your feedback as well. Thank you very much for your patience. And yes, of course, as with us always. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.